Southeast Radio's Business Matters with Karl Fitzpatrick.
Southeast Radio.
Welcome back to Southeast Radio's Business Matters with me, Karl Fitzpatrick. My final guest this morning, John O'Connell, swapped the world of e-commerce for music tech when he joined startup AudiosourceRE. John now reveals why the business has become an instant global success. John, AudiosourceRE has been dubbed as the Photoshop for music and audio. But prior to joining AudiosourceRE, you had already worked with some leading e-commerce brands.
That's right. My background was in publishing, I suppose, traditional publishing, and then I suppose what would be called migrating those traditional publishing brands, both the audience and the revenues online. So I would have worked with the likes of Guardian Media Group on their brands here in Ireland. Originally we would have had Auto Trader, which many people would be familiar with, would have been one of the leading classified advertising magazines sold on a weekly basis in Ireland. I think it achieved sales of around 76,000 a week at its height. And subsequently then we would have developed the CarZone brand, which we bought from its founders at a very early stage. So we would have developed the CarZone brand, which again, it would still remain one of the most successful online classified automotive brands in the country.
CarZone.ie in your time was unbelievably successful, but what was the key ingredient behind its success?
Probably the key ingredient would have been measurability. So a car dealer, for example, would be able to understand exactly the value that they were getting for their investment, usually which was a monthly fee to promote and expose their used cars and in some cases new cars for sale to the public. So probably was the first, or one of the first certainly, online media elements that could demonstrate real value for money by showing, how much response that you were getting to the type of vehicles that you had promoted on through your site, and what sort of return you were getting off of those, because you could nearly measure them down to each individual car.
Now, as I said, you're the current CEO of AudiosourceRE. So what is it and how does it work?
Well, AudiosourceRE is a company that develops innovative technology for separating sound. Now, that might sound a little bit strange, but many people would know Photoshop, for example, which is the image manipulation technology that's produced by Adobe. So basically what AudiosourceRE does is we make technology that allows you to separate locked, let's say, music files, for example, and break that down into individual layers. So if you wanted a karaoke track, let's say, your favorite band, be that, Adele or someone like Guns N' Roses or something like that, and you wanted to be able to sing along to the band, you can use our technology to separate the vocal element of it out and play the original backing track. So that gives you an idea of how powerful the software is. So we've used quite a lot of very well-known, prestigious industry partners to help us develop it. So, for example, Abbey Road Studios in London would have helped us quite a lot over the last 2 years in bringing it to the stage that it is now. AHS in Japan, RT in Dublin, for example, were very helpful. They've got 6 different audio divisions in there, 3 in radio, 3 in TV. And we've been using partners like those, as well as Grammy award-winning producers and engineers and musicians right across the globe to be able to help us actually create the technology and bring it to the stage where we have viable products that people can now use easily to separate, whether that's music, whether that's a soundtrack, whether that's a broadcasting track. So it's quite flexible, and we feel that there are uses above and beyond just music and audio. So things like voice biometrics and audio forensics, we feel there's long-term potential there also.
We've seen for many, many years the use of karaoke, whereby they're separating the lyrics from the music itself. So what's different about this?
So if you look at the leading karaoke app suppliers, and karaoke is absolutely huge right across the globe. I don't think we really appreciate it here, but in the Far East, in China and Japan, even in South America, places like that, it is growing exponentially. And you have major conglomerates over there, the likes of Tencent Music Entertainment, for example. They've got the leading 3 karaoke apps in the Chinese market. They've got 800 million users and about 30 million pieces of music in their catalogue. So if they have 3 different apps, as I say, they produce all of the range of popular music on those apps. But in each case, unless they own the rights to the music or they have the original backing tracks, then what they have to do is go to the bother of recording generic tracks, which then the people who use the apps sing along to. Most people would prefer to sing along to the original band. So, there's another use, and we're actually testing with Tencent at the moment an enterprise solution that would allow them to separate the vocals from the original mix, but leave in, let's say, the vocal harmonies or the backing vocals, and allow people on their karaoke apps to sing along with the original band or with the original artist. So that's far more appealing than just a bland generic backing track to sing along to.
Okay, so my understanding is that if you don't have the master track, you then can't separate the lyrics from the music.
It is. The technology challenge here makes very interesting. It's like an interesting story. It's been described as trying to, separate a curry back into its original ingredients. And what I mean by that, Photoshop, as I mentioned earlier on, you have an image on a screen here. Usually that consists of a group or grids of pixels. You literally go in, you pick out the pixels, grids that you want, you take those out and you replace them with something else. Now, how do you do that with music? Because you have no visual image in which to work with from the start. So what our technology does is it creates a proxy for that. So we create a visual image on a screen that allows you then to go in and identify the various elements and various parts of the music. So whether that's a drum beat, whether that is a vocal track or a vocal layer. And then you can take that out and then you can fine tune it just like you can in Photoshop with a series of smart tools that allow you to go in and, smooth around the edges and all of that sort of stuff. So that's why it's taken quite a long time for someone to come up with solutions for this. There have been, there are other technologies out there that try to do it, but we've been told by certainly our test partners and the likes of Tencent in China in particular that ours is the closest that you will get to a very clean and very usable backing track.
As I said at the top of this interview, this business has been dubbed as the Adobe Photoshop for music and audio. Now, I'm recording this very interview on Adobe Audition. I'm perplexed as to why Adobe haven't tackled this market already.
Well, Adobe do have software technology for the music industry, but unless your background is in this and unless you have like Derry, who's created this technology, unless you've got a background that you really understand how source separation works, it's very hard to create it. Now, people like Adobe and some other major players are starting to dabble in this, and they're using artificial intelligence in order to try and achieve results with it. But the problem is that with AI, unless you're, for example, using it on a piece of music that's very close to the trainee set or the data set that you trained it on, you're not going to get very good results. And in fact, if you use it on something else, you're going to get very bad results. So that's one of the reasons why we feel that we've got some good competitive advantage here, because the algorithms that Derry has created have taken a long while to get to where he is with that now. And the beauty about it is that our technology is cloud-based technology. So if you want to separate it, what you've got to do is you've got to, upload your file into our system. That's then sent to our separation processing stack. That's all done in the cloud, and you get that back onto your desktop, and you work away with it.
This product is the output of 18 years of research that was completed by Dr. Derry Fitzgerald, a researcher in Cork Institute of Technology. But what led Derry down this particular track in the first place?
Carl, it's quite an interesting story, believe it or not. Derry loves to tell it, but Derry is a frustrated musician in his spare time, and one of his favourite bands, he always felt that the drummer in this particular band was apparently had a reputation as being one of the best session musicians in LA, and he often wondered, how could he actually take, that drum beat out and use it himself in sampling or another track, and he went about trying to do that, and in fact that's what his PhD in his early days was based on. He got very interested in this, and then did quite a lot of work and quite a lot of research. But I suppose the most interesting part of it is one of his academic papers was picked up by a guy called Mark Lynette, who does an awful lot of work for Capitol Records and particularly the Beach Boys. And they wanted to remaster and re-release some of the Beach Boys material. their albums and their singles. And when they went to try and do this, because they were recorded, these albums were recorded quite a while ago, some of the master tracks and some of the original material was no longer there or wasn't usable. So Mark contacted Derry and said, look, we've been looking at what you've been doing academically. Do you think you could help us out? So Derry ended up spending about 6 months trying to write algorithms and finding ways to achieve this. And being a big Beach Boys fan, he threw his heart and soul into it. Managed to do it and bring it to a stage whereby they could use the material that they were able to salvage from the work that Derry did. And he's ended up as being credited on 4 Beach Boys albums with Capitol Records, and they're actually using our technology at the moment to remaster songs like Good Vibrations and Help Me Rhonda for re-release on vinyl this year. So it's amazing how these sort of things come to fruition. I was put in touch with Derry then by Enterprise Ireland. I'm an Enterprise Ireland business partner, and through that we had a look at what the commercial potential was. I went off and did a business plan for them, and Derry and I then decided, look, there's definitely something here. Let's see if we can commercialize it. So that's how we came to license the technology, create AudiosourceRE, and spin it out at CIT.
It's a great story. Now, John, since launching the product back in November of last year, the company has built a roster of 200 clients across Europe, the US and Japan. How would you classify these clients, and how has the business achieved this level of traction over such a short period of time?
It's a real mix of people. I suppose not that long after we incorporated, we managed to win some CSF investment, and we decided to use that to launch the products at 2 major fairs in the US. One called AES in New York in November last year, and the other called NAM, which is an even bigger one, and that is in LA. So we took the technology over there, took a small stand in each case, and then through a little bit of publicity with SOS, Sound on Sound, Pro Sound News, Mix Online, hard graft really to try and get these people to see what we were actually doing. And the fact that it's very much emerging technology, it's a challenge that's been in the pro audio industry for quite a while. These guys were quite interested, so they came along to the stand. They had a look at what we were doing. Then we sent them beta copies of the technology. They liked what they saw. When we launched it, they reviewed it, and through those reviews and some good social media, even though we don't have an awful lot of money, but good use of social media, word of mouth, and also very early on we got some good traction with some distribution deals. One in the Japanese market, which we hadn't necessarily expected. That helped us to launch the products there relatively quickly. And we've recently signed a distribution deal with Plugivery, which is a company based in Canada for the North American market. And they've managed to promote it on our behalf as well. So with the help of those guys and some hard graft and word of mouth, we've managed to sell over 250 products at this stage.
Now, as the technology advances, have you a plan in place to further develop AudiosourceRE's product offering in order to stay ahead of new entrants and existing players in the market?
We're very much looking over our shoulder is the answer to that. And what we've got to do is we've got to raise investment in order to be able to help us to do that. And the one way you raise investment is by, bringing relatively new technology to potential investors, the likes of angel syndicates, HBAN, VCs, private investors, and more importantly, make sure that you have validation for the market. So the fact that we've sold over 250 products has proved that there is, people are prepared to put their hand in their pockets and pay us money for this. So that has interested some VCs, and we started talking to VCs even before we'd incorporated, saying, look, we think we're going to have something here. And we've got to the stage now whereby we're close to nailing our initial investment, which will allow us to develop the technology further. And what I mean by that is to incorporate what we call deep neural network learnings into our existing algorithms. That will allow us to come up with very quick solutions, shorten speed to market, turnaround processing times, improve the quality of the initial separations, because In a mix, you will never get it absolutely right. Some tracks and some mixes, you'll get very good immediate separations, but depending on how dense that mix is, you may have to then go off and do a little bit of manual work, like we mentioned around Photoshop for that. So the better you can create, the better quality you can create from automatic mixes, the quicker you are able to provide solutions for our clients, and particularly the social media or the social karaoke clients, because there's a lot of money going into the digital music market, from the likes of Tencent, who I mentioned, Alibaba, even Facebook, for example. Facebook have a thing called Lip Sync Live, which is effectively a visual karaoke app. So we believe that that's where ultimately the scaling potential for the company is, and we're testing a product for an enterprise solution for Tencent at the moment. So, if that goes well, then obviously that gives us a lot of validation to be able to take this enterprise solution to the other players in the market.
And has your company's success attracted the attention of software companies such as Adobe or even social media companies? And could they view the business as an acquisition target?
There's a little bit of work that we have to do yet in order to bring in that expertise and incorporate that DNM that I spoke about. And I think we're a little bit away from that. But ultimately, if in a few years' time we've demonstrated that we can come up with not just pro audio solutions, but also enterprise solutions and the other areas I mentioned, voice biometric offerings, audio forensic offerings, then naturally that's going to create interest, and we would hope at some stage that it might attract someone like Adobe if it's a pro audio solution that they're looking for, or even some of the bigger players like Facebook or like Tencent, who might be interested in maybe partnering or investing for future growth, or potentially ultimately an exit for the shareholders.
Well, if you've just tuned in, that was John O'Connell from AudiosourceRE, and I would like to thank John for sharing his insights into this fascinating startup.
Southeast Radio's Business Matters with Karl Fitzpatrick.